Thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Cicero Planning Board meeting. My name is Mark Marzullo. We'll go ahead and I'm the chairman of the planning board. We'll call the meeting to order, and then we'll start with the attendance of the representatives from the town. We'll start with planning board members. Mr. Rosito.
Here.
Mr. Abbey.
Here.
Mr. Snyder. Turn your mic on, sir.
Here.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Mr. Bloss.
Here.
Mr. Maurizio.
Here.
Our planning board clerk, Cindy Chamberlain.
Here.
Planning board engineer, Mark Parrish.
Here.
Planning board attorney, Neil Germain.
Here.
Director of Codes Enforcement, Steve Procopio.
Present.
In our liaison, Nancy White, and town board member Judy Boyke, who is typically with us. They have a meeting this evening, so I do not expect to see them. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Snyder, would you lead us off on the pledge, please?
Pledge allegiance to the
United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for that. And we will approve the minutes from our September 16th meeting. Everybody's had a chance to review. Any questions or comments? Do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr.
Second.
Rosito, seconded by Mr. Bloss. Mr. Rosito.
Yes.
Mr. Abbey.
Yes.
Mr. Snyder.
I'll abstain since I was not in the meeting.
Mr. Bloss.
Yes.
And I vote yes. The motion passes. The planning board will continue to accept public comment on any active application that is currently before the board. Because this meeting is being conducted virtually, anybody wishing to make a comment needs to do that in writing via email, fax, or postal service. And the information for those addresses can be found on the town's website. We will slide into the first item on the agenda. And this is first two items. It's for Whitaker minor subdivision. We had opened a public hearing at the last meeting, and then we'll get into the site plan. So we'll start with the public hearing. I did receive one letter today. Did the rest of the board get a chance to see it? It came late.
I did not.
All right, I'll read it just for the record.
I did read it. I saw it.
Okay, I'll go through it since some of us have not. This came from Marcia Holfler, and she lives at 5799 McKinley Road. And it starts, I have lived at 5799 McKinley Road for the past 60 years and have always enjoyed the beauty and quietness of the woods and all the wildlife behind my home where the subdivision is requested to take place. It will be a shame to disrupt the habitat of the deer, turkeys, pheasants, rabbits, excuse me, and yes, the coyotes with their young. And will greatly miss all of them visiting our yards. Although we do not welcome any disruption of these woods, I'm asking that a large enough buffer be left in place to accommodate a sense of wildlife and peacefulness that we have enjoyed with the woods behind us these past years. And so, board members, you all have that in your email, but like I said, it came in late this afternoon.
Thank you.
And Steve, nothing else has come in, correct? That's the only one?
That's correct.
So with that, I'll close the public hearing. Any questions or comments? I'll go through the board. Mr. Rosito?
No.
This is on the subdivision. Mr. Abbey?
Nope.
Not at all.
Mr. Bloss?
No.
I have nothing on the subdivision either. Neil, do we need a seeker for subdivision?
Yes, we do.
Joe, would you propose a seeker, please?
Yes, I propose our standard seeker. It's a form of motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Abbey. Mr. Rosito?
Yes.
Mr. Abbey?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Bloss?
Yes.
And I vote yes. And Neil, could you propose a motion to approve the subdivision?
Yes, you're going to move for the adoption of a resolution approving the application known as minor subdivision preliminary and final plan 5827 McKinley Road, 2 lots. This approval is strictly conditioned on the following. The applicant is hereby advised that pursuant to section 185(6) subsection F of the code, the applicant has 90 days from the approval to file the map. If the applicant misses the 90-day filing deadline, this approval will have expired. 2, the applicant is further notified that the chairman of the planning board may delay signing of the final plan until the chairman verifies that the applicant has executed any and all necessary agreements with the town and that security or any undertakings are in place.
Can I add one more thing to that, please?
Sure.
So there was a few items that they needed to address from the comments in our letter, which they've done. However, there is a mistake on the setbacks. So I'd like to have that also conditioned upon adjusting the setbacks shown on the final plan to eliminate the side yard setback shown for the delineation between the two districts on the site.
I'm sorry, Mark, I did see that. Do we want to condition it or do we want to wait until we see the revised map?
No, they've adjusted it, but they just have one small error that they need to take care of. So conditioning it is fine.
You just won't sign it until it's checked out.
Exactly. So when a final plan comes in to be signed, Mark, I know you usually ask us if it's okay to sign, or Heidi does, and so we'll look at it, and if it's correct, we'll advise you sign it. If it needs to be adjusted, we'll advise accordingly.
Perfect.
Mark, I have a comment.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm looking at something wrong, but on the application, it has 5827 McKinley Road, and on the drawings, it's 5917. What am I missing?
I'll defer.
Pardon?
Does anybody have an answer for that?
I see 5827 on the subdivision plan.
I do too, but on the drawing, it says 5917 McKinley.
Which
What am I?
which drawing are you looking at?
Might have the wrong one.
What's the date of the drawing, Joe?
September 2nd.
Just to throw this out there, the 5827, I think, that's just one part of that subdivision, and now where the solar farm wants to build, that's got a different address.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, because
All right.
5827, I think, is going to remain on the lot where Whitaker's is, and their construction equipment is now.
Right.
But there's no, where the entrance and everything to the solar farm is east of that just a little bit. That's obviously got to have a different number.
Okay, I can't see the other number on the full scale drawings. That's why, not that it really matters, but.
Mr. Aceto, I think the 5917 you're looking at is the adjacent parcel.
Oh, that.
It is.
It's to the right of it. Oh, all right.
I represent Whitaker, and it is the adjacent parcel. They own a few parcels around there.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Good question. Thank you for the clarification. Any other questions or comments? So we have, you made the motion with Mark's.
Yes, I've included Mark's suggestion, and that will be verified by the planning board engineer before signing by the planning board chairman. So we're good to go. We just need a vote.
All right, so that's in the form of a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Is that Mr. Rosito?
Yes.
We'll do a roll call. Mr. Rosito,
Yes.
Mr. Abbey,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes,
Mr. Bloss,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Now we'll move into the site plan for the same project. The applicant, you wanted representative for the applicant, you want to go through your answers to Mr. Parrish's questions and comments, please?
Absolutely. Yeah, and thank you for hearing me tonight. We appreciate the time and the opportunity. So we did receive comments from engineering firm O'Brien and Gear, OBG, part of Ramble, dated September 17th. Let me pull up my response letter, which we provided, and you should have copies of. And also prepared to share if we want to look at the site plan as well. Let me know if you want me to pull that up. But the first comment was the location of existing utility services and any proposed modification should be shown on the plan. If no modifications are proposed, this should be noted on the plan. So we added existing utility poles and overhead electric lines to the plans. We added a revision cloud to sheet C100 showing the change. In addition, we added greater detail to the keynote section of drawing C200 of the site plan, indicating more detail on what that electrical equipment consists of. Second comment is the access points to the site should be defined with an asphalt apron, 24 feet width and minimum of 40 feet length, which we accepted and have reflected in the plans. And you'll see not only on the site plan sheet C200, we referred to it in the keynotes, but we also provided an additional detail, number 1 on sheet C301. Revision clouds were added to the drawing to highlight the driveway as well as the detail on sheets 301. The next comment was proposed grades should be shown on the plans or a note that existing grades are to be maintained. So the project does require minimal grading. We added a note that says existing grades will be substantially maintained subject pursuant to field conditions. We added that general note number 1 to drawing C101 site plan. A revision cloud was added to highlight that change. Keynote number 4, the following are comments on lighting, signage, landscaping, and or other miscellaneous items. We added a statement of use showing the operating hours, intended operating hours of the plan, and also added a note on sheet drawing C200 outlining the description of use of the project. Construction hours and operating hours are outlined on sheet C200 as well. Revision clouds were added to highlight that change. Keep in mind, it is an unmanned facility. Next comment is the front yard setback should be dimensioned from the road right-of-way line. The front yard setback was adjusted in dimension from the McKinley right-of-way line and indicated on sheet C200. We also added the name and address of site owners of adjacent properties to the plans. I just noted Marcia on here as well, so I see where she is and understand the letter. Next comment is number 4D, information on proposed lighting should be provided or a note placed on the plan that no lighting is proposed if that's the case. So to be clear, no lighting is proposed on this project. We added a drawing to sheet C200 stating this and added a revision cloud to highlight that change. Next is 4E, information on proposed signage should be provided or a note placed on the plan that no signage is proposed. We do intend to add signage. This is warning signage indicating high voltage. So signs will be mounted on the front gate as well as all the way around the perimeter fence every 100 feet. We added a detail number 7, sheet C301, and added a revision cloud to highlight that detail. Number 4F, barbed wire is not allowed per the town code. The fence detail should be revised accordingly. We eliminated the barbed wire from the fence. Details are shown or detail 1 on sheet C300 and 2 on sheet C300 were revised. We added a revision cloud to highlight that change and made comment to it in the response letter. 4G is the wetland delineation report prepared before the project should be provided. Information should be provided on the status of jurisdictional determination for the wetland boundary. So we wrote that our response is the project will not encroach in any wetlands or wetland setbacks as required by both state and federal guidelines. As a result, the jurisdictional determination would not typically be required. We have taken this into consideration, and we do a lot of responsible development in the state of New York, and we always stay as far as we can from these wetland areas. We have enough buildable area on this site where we don't need to encroach or even have a perception of encroaching, we're not going to get anywhere near it. It's current plan. Details should be, number 4H, details should be provided of all equipment to be installed, such as inverters, transformers, etc. So we added specification sheets to details on sheet C302 and 303. And that is the equipment that we are intending on using. That's the equipment that we specified in our interconnection documents. Please note that that equipment should be considered typical and is subject to change, right? These are to some extent black boxes where solar panels, a solar panel is a solar panel. They're all about 3.5 by 6.5. They all look relatively the same, and the inverters are somewhat subject to change based on availability of supply constraints due to COVID and things of that nature. So they are meant to be diagrammatic in nature. For I, it appears a subdivision is proposed to create a lot for the project. Subdivision application should be submitted, which we did and we just discussed. And then the last comment is 4J, a decommissioning agreement should be developed with the planning board attorney. In response to that, we submitted a decommissioning plan, which should have been provided in the stack of materials that we submitted for this meeting today.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
Mark Parrish, I'm going to start with you. Any questions or comments based on what we just heard?
No, we're all set with the plans as they are. Again, if the board wants to look at the buffering, maybe just discuss that. We can look at that, but I think the only other item is to confirm that the decommissioning agreement's acceptable.
Thank you. We'll go through the board. Mr. Rosito?
No, I'm all set. This looks like you answered everything.
Mr. Abbey?
Had a couple of questions. One is, what's the projected life of these units? The ones we dealt with in the past were in the 25-year range.
That's correct. Yeah. Module performance, solar panel performance is actually warranted for 25 years.
Thank you. And are there any batteries involved in this project?
No, sir.
Thank you. I'm all set.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Bloss?
No further questions.
Mr. Maurizio, have you gotten anything?
No questions. Thanks.
No questions. I've got a couple things. First of all, the letter that we received for the public hearing on the subdivision, I think that's probably more appropriate for site plan. So we talked about scheduling a public hearing for the site plan as well. So we'll do that this evening. And I'll move those comments to the public hearing for the site plan as well. Obviously, we're going to want to look at the buffering for that site. And along with the buffering and landscaping, I think it might be worth doing additional landscaping on the east side, going north a bit. You know, it's right at the corner of the road. There's a parcel on, you know, to the east of that, and just to kind of buffer it from the road. So I think I would like to see that. And then, can you tell us whether or not the tree line would stay in place from the Sneller Road view? It looks like it does, but I just want to confirm that.
From McKinley Road?
Sneller Road, the back portion of the site. So
yes,
that tree line stays.
Yeah, it's north of the panels,
right?
So it doesn't present any risks of shading the solar energy equipment. Okay. So yes, it will stay.
So with that, Neil, do you want to should we do the motion now for the public hearings, get that scheduled? Or do you want to continue moving on with these questions? Microphone. Mr. Jermaine, your microphone's not on. There you go.
I apologize for that.
That's
Am
okay.
I back?
You're back.
Yeah, we can do the, I had some comments on the decommissioning plan, but we can do the motion now. You're going to move for the adoption of a resolution calling for a public hearing in the matter known as SSC Cicero LLC, 5827 McKinley Road, proposed ground-mounted solar facility. This public hearing shall commence at 6:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard at a regularly scheduled meeting of the planning board on Wednesday, October 21st, 2020.
And that is in the form of a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Abbey. Mr. Rosito,
Yes.
Mr. Abbey,
Yes.
Mr. Snyder,
Yes.
Mr. Bloss,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Neil, did you have any other comments on
Yeah,
the site plan? I know you wanted to talk about decommissioning.
Just in general, I looked over the decommissioning plan, and there was a couple of items that are going to be required. I didn't see that it provided a bond or undertaking to ensure that the funds will be available to properly decommission the facility if the town is forced to do so in the future. So when you rework your decommissioning plan, you might want to focus on making sure that we do have an undertaking or a bond in place, and the amount of that bond will have to be determined in part by consulting with the town engineer to determine an adequate undertaking to decommission the place should the town need to do so in the future. And I would be mindful of the fact that the town is pays prevailing wage, and that should be in your thinking when you go to present an amount of bond and talk to that issue with our engineers. Another thing about decommissioning plans is we have to have some form of easement or right to enter property. So let's just say the worst case scenario happens and the solar company goes away and they're not going to decommission it and we have to decommission it. We have to have a permanent easement or right to enter the property to perform that work sometime in the future should we get the worst case scenario and the town actually has to do the work. Okay. I typically would want to see some kind of language in a decommissioning plan that covers abandonment of the facility. So let's just say the facility is abandoned and you're not properly maintaining it and we have an eyesore or something like that. After a certain period of time, the town should have a right to use the funds and decommission the facility. So those are some of the things that need to be worked into your proposed decommissioning plan.
Yep, I appreciate that. We do have the intention, and it is typical to provide a decommissioning bond to the town. And usually we would include the intent to do so as part of our decommissioning plan, but then get into the actual value and cost through the building permit phase once the final design is completed, because then we actually have equipment quantities and totals.
Okay.
We can do it as you like. We're happy to participate in whatever the town prefers.
Okay. No, that makes sense with you, because we're going to have to come to some kind of agreement as to cost in the future. So, but the other items you're going to need to address. But I fully understand wanting to wait on determining a cost a little bit further down the road, but there would have to be some kind of undertaking.
Yep, absolutely. And we work very closely with NYSERDA, who publishes documentation and proposed, let's say, proposals to towns for how to manage these processes. And if we value them in line with their values consistent with NYSERDA guidelines, I think it gets us substantially the way there. So we can, we often defer to those guidelines across the board from municipality to municipality to try and offer some kind of consistent basis. So it's not us just coming up with the value, it's the NYSERDA guidelines that we typically work from.
Right. And we would also need the right to enter the property as well.
Understood. Do you have something in mind?
Typically there would be some kind of easement that would run with the land, that the landowner would agree that in the event that we have to come in and do that type of work, we would have the ability to do that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see any reason why that should be, makes sense, right? Why issue the bond if you can't get into the property? So
That's
totally
been one of
understood.
the things. People do the bonds, but they don't realize that if ever, I might have the money one day, but I might not have the right to go on the property.
Understood.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
David,
you.
just one more thing. The Onondaga County Planning Board submitted a review letter. You've received that, I assume?
Yes, yeah, we have gone through 239 review and we have received comments.
Did you provide comments back to us?
Allow me to pull those up.
There was one recommended modification and then there was one comment. And I don't need it now, but if you could provide that for the next meeting, that would be terrific.
We will provide it for the next meeting.
Wonderful.
No problem.
I appreciate that. And that will conclude this item on the agenda. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, everybody. We appreciate it very
Thank
much.
Okay.
The next item is Pulis Property Subdivision. This is for the property at 6126 Mud Mill Road. This is a 2-lot subdivision. We're just setting, is the applicant here tonight?
Yeah, Tim Corey, News and Romans,
Hi, Jim.
surveyor for the applicant. Yeah, tonight we're just asking to set the public hearing. This is a 2-lot subdivision on Mud Mill Road. Basically, it's an existing 4.8 acre parcel. They're looking to carve off will be the easterly side of the property. And
Tim, hold on 1 second. Do we have a map? Can somebody put the map up? No? Tim, do you have it?
I have it on my screen. Can I share?
Yeah, Mike can allow that.
Yeah, you should be able to share.
Can everyone see that?
Great, thank you.
So, as I was saying, it's a 4.8 acre parcel. There's an existing house on the west side of the property. They're looking to carve off this lot 2 here. It's roughly 2 acres that they're carving off. The remainder is going to be 2.7. They're going to probably sell it off or build a house on it.
Thank you, Tim. We'll go through and see if there's any questions at this point. Mr. Aceto,
No.
Mr. Abbey,
All set.
Mr. Snyder. Mr. Snyder, we cannot hear you.
I'm just wondering, is all of this, it looks like it's all wetland?
No, there's basically according to the deed, it's a wetland check zone. So in theory, there could possibly be wetlands out there. So before they go building, they have to make sure they take a look at any they're possibly on the site.
So it's not, the check zone was proved that it's not going to be wetland?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bloss.
No questions at this time.
Mr. Marizio,
No questions.
Mr. Parrish, have you got anything right now?
I guess the only thing would be to, I guess, have some sort of look at the wetlands be completed. I just want to look at the plan a little. Lot area. I guess, Tim, do the wetland map show any wetlands in the area?
They're across the street.
Across the street? Okay. All right. We'll be putting together some comments. I'll look at the situation here, and if there's a need for further investigation, I'll put those into the comments that are submitted.
Thank you, Mark. Mr. Jermaine, anything at this point?
No.
Mr. Procopio?
Yeah, and Mark will probably pick up on his review letter, but I noticed it showed a typical wet sewer connection detail on the map, and there's not really any sewer availability. Oh, did you take it off?
I took it off.
Okay, the one we had it on there before. Oh,
Yeah, I took it off.
Good catch. All right, Neil, would you make a motion for the public hearing scheduling, please?
Yes, you're going to move for the adoption of resolution calling for a public hearing on the matter known as minor subdivision preliminary and final plan ICA 5 LLC, Pulis Property Subdivision, 6126 Mud Mill Road, 2 lots. The public hearing shall commence at 6:40 or soon thereafter, as the matter may be heard at a regularly scheduled meeting of the planning board on Wednesday, October 21st, 2020.
And that's an affirmative motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Rosito,
Yes.
Mr. Abbey,
yes,
Mr. Snyder,
yes,
Mr. Bloss,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Motion passes. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much.
Mike, can you take the map off, please? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Milton Real Properties of Massachusetts. This is for the property at 7285, 7309 Eastman Road. It's proposed Caterpillar sales and service area. Gentlemen, welcome back.
Well, thanks, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate that. Seems like it's been a long time.
It has been a while. Yes. But onward, forward, right?
Exactly. But we're still here and we're still going strong. So
Beautiful. Good to hear. So you want to go through the list that you received from Mark Parrish, your answers to those?
yeah, I have on the call with us Adam Thibodeau and Lee Allen with Colby Company Engineering. They've been working with Mr. Parrish and the folks going through those things. I just wanted to say good evening and thanks for we're still plugging and we're gonna see this thing through.
Good
So,
to hear. Good to hear.
Adam and Lee, please take over.
Great, thank you, Brad.
Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, can we have the ability to share our screen?
We can do that.
Adam Thibodeau, please.
Beautiful. Thank you, Michael.
Let's go. Are you able to see what's on our screen? Are you seeing the plan on your screen?
Seeing page 1,
Okay, perfect.
the index.
Okay, I'll start. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Lee Allen with Colby Company Engineering. Here to respond to some of the comments that were raised most recently by the North Syracuse Volunteer Fire Department. I talked at length with Deputy Chief Linnertz last week, and apparently the changes we made didn't get back to him by the time he had when he wrote this letter. But we had talked about providing 26 feet of clearance around the building, and we have 26 feet here now. The canopies we have pushed back in this area. So this canopy has a little jog to get clearance here. And these aisles have been enlarged to 26 feet so that he, in fact, has 26 feet all the way around the building. In addition, we had gotten results of a flow test of the hydrant that's located out here in Eastman Road. The results had 900 GPM residual. We need roughly 1,500 GPM, so we have added a fire pump house and a storage tank to meet the firefighting demands, water demands for this building. In addition to that, we originally had a hydrant to serve the back of the property located in the back corner. It's been moved here so they can lay hose down between the wash bay and the main building as he had requested. So those are the 3 kind of outstanding comments from the fire department. Mr. Parrish had.
Can I just ask a question before you go on?
Sure.
There was a letter submitted by the North Syracuse Fire Department on October 5th.
Yeah.
These changes are after that?
The changes I just described, I had responded back to him, but he didn't get or wasn't able to see that through his computer instead of a hard copy. He prefers hard copies that we had made them. So he had listed them, and we're showing you on the screen that we have in fact made those changes.
Yeah, it looks like his concerns were addressed in those. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Parrish had, we've talked at length as we've gone through this process several times. He had some comments. Number one had to do with stormwater, and at the end of the day, necessity for Milton Cat and the town to enter into a stormwater maintenance agreement. We agree that's pretty standard these days. Number 2 talks about our site driveway out onto Northern Boulevard, which is right in this area. We have received a tentative agreement from the DOT that they've approved this entrance, pending board action to move this forward and allow Mr. Procopio to sign off on that. The other question had to do with what types of equipment are stored outside of a facility like this. So we have some pictures from other sites just to share with you. This is a site in Londonderry, New Hampshire. You're looking at excavators, loaders, that sort of machinery. It's out in front. Here's another view. I mean, this is very typical for all the Milton Cat facilities in the Northeast.
Those are all for sale.
I bet they are.
I like that.
Here's a picture of the front of the Batavia, New York facility. As you can see, it's that type of, yellow Caterpillar excavator, loader, dump truck, skid steers. That sort of equipment will be located in the front of this building as well. One of the things that's we've worked at length with the town on is the off-site sewer. We don't have soils acceptable for sewer. That folder. So we've worked with the town engineer, Ms. Fiorello, and come up with a plan. Yeah. That should be on the screen now. So our site is shaded here in red. We're proposing a force main up the side of Northern Boulevard to a point where gravity can take over and then run gravity past the next 2 properties and then turn back east and tie into a pump station that will be constructed as part of this project. So that's our ultimate plan, is how we're going to deal with sewer. Just wanted to share with you that's what we're thinking, and we've talked with Mr. Procopio, Mr. Parrish, and Ms. Fiorello about this path moving forward. Go back to the site plan. Fourth comment has to do with coordination with the water district. Adequate fire protection, as we mentioned earlier, we've got underground storage here with a fire pump house here. Further noting that we will have installed backflow preventers to ensure that we're not contaminating back into the system. That's a note that we've added to the plan and we'll make sure of is part of the building permit package when they get submitted. The fifth comment is to review the landscaping, lighting signage, buffering, and wanted to share with you the landscape plan. So this is an area that's blown up that's in the front of the building. Eastman Road is in this location. Northern Boulevard is here. This area with this hatch will be grassed, and we have some trees that are tucked in around the driveway and then up here, and some shrubs along the front of the building, another tree over here. What's particular to note is, based on our stormwater calculations, this area of grass is very integral to the stormwater system, as a lot of the runoff, mostly from the roof of the building, is going to be stored, and then we're going to use that as irrigation to sprinkle this area of grass and supply water for these plants during the growing season. That's an LID method that is allowed by the state. We've reviewed it with Mr. Parrish, and he has agreed that we do in fact meet the intent of the DEP rules. As far as signage goes, We have building signage, and I'll let Adam get to that when we talk about the building, but there is one sign out front. Anyway, the sign is located in the front in this general area. And I'm sure it shows up on another sheet. I just don't read at my fingertips. Anyway, I know it's out there.
Take your time.
The items that Mr. Parrish brought up, lighting, he thought that was reasonable. We can certainly get into detail if you have questions on that. Further, simple subdivision, that this parcel consists of 2 lots. We would work with land surveyor to produce a plan that would merge those lots and be part of ultimately what is an approval, we hope. Number 6 talks about following wetland permit. I think when we were before you in February, we still had work on the permit. We in fact received the permit for wetlands from the Army Corps and the DEP in July of this past year. That, do you want to get into the building architecture? Adam's going to go briefly through the building elevations, just point out.
Okay, thank you.
It was a opinion of the board for us to go through some of the building elements themselves. So I'm happy to walk you through some of those items. I'll take you to the building rendering. I think it's probably most representative. The top left corner
Excuse me
here is-
1 second. It's kind of hard to hear you, so I don't know if you got.
I'm sorry. Looking at the front facade of the facility.
Much better, thank you.
So the Milton Cat typically constructs their facilities using a pre-engineered metal building type structure. And so they're typically clad in metal for the top portion of the building with a portion of block that runs along the perimeter, along the grade level up to about 8 feet in height. Right now we're showing that approximately 8 feet with a band of split face block running through the middle there. Roofs are typically constructed either of EPDM rubber roof or standing seam metal, depending on the location of the building and what's most advantageous for the site and the connection of these buildings. The front facade of the building, as you see down here, has a lot of curtain wall glass to make it as inviting as possible for the customers coming in. You have your moment entry to the facility right here in the middle of that curtain wall. There's also a secondary entrance over here to the left. That's for the company called Cytec. Cytec does all the instrumentation for Milton Cat equipment. And they have a presence in the Northeast alongside Milton Cat. So they are providing a part of their facility for the Cytec operation as well. On the right-hand side of the front facade of the facility, you'll see there's a loading dock. That's for customer parts pickup. Milton Cat does a lot of sales, obviously not just equipment, but parts. And so it's a big portion of their business, and they have a fairly substantial sized warehouse that you see in the top right corner with this overhang that allows customers to back in undercover, pick up their parts, and be on their way. The major elements of the facility, other than the warehouse and this office space, we have the service bay, big piece of Milton Cat's operation and service of all their equipment. We're looking at 4 large bays to accommodate the largest piece of equipment that they have and service. We also have a secondary outbuilding that's going to be consisting of a wash bay for washing of the equipment before it goes in for service. It also currently houses a welding shop for any repairs that need welding. Just to get an overview of what the floor plan will look like. Again, we have a Cytec space up in the top side here. We have this office and lobby section, which constitutes a 2-story section of the facility. We also have a warehouse space for the parts sales, which includes this mechanical and electrical space on the backside. We have a large a large loading dock for parts drop off, large trucks. And we also have the large service shop, which I spoke to earlier, out in the back.
I think with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. It's a beautiful facility. The building is just gorgeous. We'll go through the board and see what questions or comments, Mr. Rosito.
No questions, but it does look like an awesome facility. I like the landscaping. I think it's going to be a nice piece fitting in there very well.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Abbey?
Yes, I agree that it's going to be a great addition to our town. And the question was in first consideration for snow removal, which we do get a bit of snow here.
That was the overall site plan.
Hopefully they have the equipment.
Plenty of equipment. We have areas around the site that snow could be stored. There's going to be some equipment storage in this yard. There's area to store snow here. There's area along the front and in this area to also store some snow, as well as this whole edge
Okay, so
here.
yeah, looks like you have plenty of room now.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. Mr. Snyder?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Have I read the drawings right that you're talking about adding about 6.5 feet of fill to most of the areas, since you're at 403 and the building is at 409?
That is correct. The soils out here, we have water table very close to the surface. So we needed to add fill to get above that. We also have some large underground storage areas, which are this is one of them. There's another one down here. Those are 60-inch diameter pipes. So we're taking some of that storage and we're doing the storage for the stormwater subgrade. So that's it is a lot of fill, but we are using that space in there for stormwater and storage. And
okay. Will there be a certified paint booth on the site?
No, we're not going to do a paint booth at this location.
So how do you get the equipment that you welded and stuff? How do you get it painted?
We do small, so for the small stuff, right? If it's a full equipment thing, a full repaint, we send that off-site. We do the touch-up bombs, the spray cans, which we have the ventilation and the curtain around that, but the technicians do that in their individual bays.
The heat that you're going to use gas-fired devices to heat the facility?
Intention is to use gas-fired boilers and also utilize the waste oil that's generated from this equipment and oil changes as a secondary means of fuel source.
All right. The comment that I made, we just built a new town barn, 65,000 square feet. We have a 4-inch gas line feeding that building, and there's some question whether we have enough capacity and pressure. So I thought I read somewhere where you were looking at a 2-inch gas line. I'm not an engineer. I don't pretend to be an engineer, but if that's what you're proposing, I would just ask you to please check that to make sure it's of the right size.
Thank you for that heads up.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all my comments. Good job.
Thank you, Don. Mr. Bloss?
No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Marizio?
No questions. It looks great.
Thank you. I just have one question and comment. The display area, typically in the past, the town has restricted equipment display areas from extending the equipment into the air or putting signs on the equipment extended up into the air. I just want to make sure you didn't have any issues with that based on the pictures you showed. Looks like you would not have an issue with that.
We don't use the equipment to, to display signage. And one of the things that's different since I was in front of you folks almost a year ago, I guess, when we had the first one. And as we've gone through, is that we also had genie lifts and things of the rental business, and we've broken that business out. We now have a new company called Milton Rents that does the genie lifts and things of that nature. So the equipment, whatever height, the natural height of the equipment is, we don't do the extender booms and things like that. So that should not be an issue at all.
Okay, good, thank you. That's all I have. Mr. Parrish?
No, we don't have anything. I don't have anything to add. Other than obviously the sewer is quite a project, so that's going to be critical for them to work with the town to get the sewer extension to the site completed.
Thank you. Mr. Jermaine?
Yes, that, and I noticed in Mark's comment, it said that we're going to provide something indicating that National Grid will allow access across their easement. Do you have that?
It's in process. I've been working with their right-of-way agent, Pam Espinola, and we're hopeful that to get something back from her in the next week or so.
Okay.
Do you folks have any pull?
Yeah.
The National Grid? No.
That's what we're finding out.
Is that it, Neil?
That's it.
Mr. Procopio?
Just that when they're ready to submit their simple subdivision application, we'll ready to receive that from them. Okay.
So, Neil, it sounds like we're good to move forward with an approval with conditions.
Yes.
We need a standard seeker, Joe?
Yes, I propose our standard seeker, and that's in the form of a motion.
You have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Abbey. Mr. Rosito?
Yes.
Mr. Abbey?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Bloss?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Seeker passes. Neil, would you present a motion for consideration, please?
Yes, you're going to move for the adoption of a resolution approving the application known as Milton Real Properties of Massachusetts LLC, 7285 and 7309 Eastman Road, proposed Caterpillar sales and service area. This approval is strictly conditioned on the following. 1, the color schemes, renderings, and/or elevations presented by the applicant to the planning board in regard to this application shall be incorporated by reference into the site plan and the board's approval thereof. Accordingly, the actual project must substantially conform to the items as presented herein. 2, the applicant will complete a subdivision to combine the lots comprising the site into a single lot. 3, the applicant's site plan indicates a projected increase in water flow of 1,050 gallons per day. The planning board recognizes the need to mitigate or offset the increased stress in the sanitary sewer system in accordance with the town's policy regarding the offset and/or mitigation requires the payment of $4 per gallon, or in this case, $4,200 to be paid to the town. Said payment shall be due and payable before the earliest of the issuance of any required permit or 30 days from the date of this approval. Next, the planning board reserves the right at any time to verify the actual water flow to verify that it conforms to the projections as supplied by the applicant. Next, the applicant shall provide information indicating the National Grid will allow access across their easement as shown on the site plan. And finally, there are no sanitary sewer facilities adjacent to the site. The applicant is working with the town for an extension of the sewer system along Northern Boulevard to provide service with the site. Accordingly, this approval is conditioned on review and approval of by the town's engineer in regard to the proposed sewer extension.
Yeah, can we just add the no equipment extended into the air and signage on that equipment, please?
Yes.
And that's in the form of a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Who was first there?
Don Bloss.
Mr. Rosito?
Correct. Yes.
Mr. Abbey?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Bloss?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Congratulations, gentlemen. Good luck. Good luck with everything.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, and just want to tell the engineers and everybody involved has been fantastic. And we're looking forward to closing on the purchase of this property and getting the sewer done and having you folks out at the site. So
Thank you for saying that. It's been a pleasure working with you all too.
thank you.
Thank you
Welcome
for
to the
coming
town.
to our town.
Next item is CDS Housing. This is for a zone change recommendation to the town board and for site plan. This is property at 8697, 8699 Brewerton Road. And this project has been in front of us before, so welcome back, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Neil, do we want to just go into the recommendation first and then get into the site plan?
Yeah, I would, the recommendation for first, because obviously you have to complete the zone change to get the site in, moving in the right direction. So if you want to do the zone change first.
So if the applicant just kind of want to explain the zone change part of it, what you're looking to do, and we can take that part from there.
Yeah, so the existing parcel is zoned a general commercial, and we're looking to use the planned unit development in order to allow for a 50-unit housing building with seniors and veterans.
Thank you for that. We'll see if there's any questions. Mr. Rosito?
No.
Mr. Abbey?
Just wondered the amount of parking spaces for 50 units.
This is just for the zone change recommendation right now, Chuck.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, all set.
Mr. Snyder?
All set.
Mr. Bloss?
All set.
Mr. Merzio?
All set.
Mr. Parrish?
No, nothing on the zone change.
Mr. Jermaine?
No, I'm set on the zone change.
Mr. Procopio?
All set, thank you.
Any other we need seeker?
No, it's just a recommendation.
You make the motion recommendation, please?
Yes, and it's going to include a finding because section 210-14G requires a finding. So I will include that in the motion. You're going to move for the adoption of resolution recommending the zone change application known as CDS Housing 8697 and 8699 Brewerton Road, commercial to plan unit development. This recommendation is made with the following findings in accordance with section 210-14G of the code. 1, the use provided will not be detrimental to the present and potential surrounding uses, but will have a beneficial effect which could not be achieved under any other district. 2, the land surrounding the proposed development can be planned in coordination with the proposed development and is compatible in use. 3, the proposed change to a planned unit development district is in conformance with the general intent of the comprehensive master plan. 4, the existing and proposed streets are suitable and adequate to carry anticipated traffic within the proposed district and the vicinity of the proposed district. 5, the existing and proposed utility service, including but not limited to water, sanitary sewer, stormwater, sewer, and are adequate for the proposed development. Each phase of the proposed development as is proposed to be completed must contain the required parking spaces, landscaping, and areas necessary for creating the sustainable, desirable, stable environment. And lastly, the proposed plan unit development district and all proposed buildings, parking spaces, and landscaping utilities can be completely developed within 5 years of the establishment of the district.
That's an informal motion. Do you have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bloss. Mr. Rosito?
Yes.
Mr. Abbey?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Bloss?
Yes.
And I vote yes, the recommendation passes. Okay, so we can get into site plan now. The applicant wants to go through the answers to Mr. Parrish's comments.
Yeah, so we received the comment letter from Mr. Parrish and provided a response letter. So the first comment is regarding the parking, which I know is of interest to several people. So between our last meeting and this meeting, we did a parking study for about a month and counted the number of parking spaces that were occupied. We counted multiple times a day. through August, and found that on average, we had around 31 of the parking spaces were occupied, and that's also in a 50-unit building. The maximum number of parking spaces occupied was 37. So what we're proposing right now is 46 spaces, which is about a 20% increase over what the counts were in that lot. At the same time, we have an area reserved for an additional 16 parking spaces if there were ever a time where it became of a concern that the parking is insufficient. So we could provide up on this, provide up to around 62 parking spaces on this site if it became necessary. At this point, in order to, obviously reduce stormwater and cost impacts, we're looking at the 46 spaces.
And that was based on the existing building, correct?
Yeah, so that's right. We counted the existing building across the street.
Yeah, I actually went into the site a number of times and kind of experienced the same thing. There's always plenty of reserved parking there. So I would agree with that. Okay, next.
There was a request to remove some of the asphalt between our property and Meltzer Court. So we have shown that on the plan, conditioned upon approval of the property owner that owns that piece of land there. The next comment was regarding coordination with Aqua. So we've continued to work with them to provide both water service, fire hydrants, and coordinate on the backflow prevention. So what they'd like to do at this point is extend a public line across the property. A portion of it is at our cost in order to service the property, and then they want to extend it further to create a loop connection back to the dead end on Knowledge Lane that was created at the end of the last project. So we'll end up having the public water across the property, so all the hydrants on our site will be public at that point, won't require backflow prevention. We will have a backflow preventer on the building and the sprinkler system within the building as required. We provided some of the cut sheets that were asked for around the lighting fixtures. We also updated some of the zoning requirements, regulations that Ms. Parrish asked us to add some additional zoning data to our general notes. We also added the statement of use and operating hours and confirmed the name and address of the property owner. There was also a request for the simple subdivision. So it's our intent next spring, pending approval of funding, that we would then move forward with the subdivision process. As you know, the subdivision will reset after a couple months. So if we do it now, we'd be back before you guys again, doing something similar. So it's our intent, once we have that funding in place, to initiate that process to combine the two lots into one property. And then I should say, at the same time, if we're able to secure that small sliver of property between Meltzer Court and our property, we would combine that at that same time as well. We have been in contact with the property owner and asked for a value of that property and what their interest in that property is. We have not received a number back yet. The property owner did indicate that there is interest in that property, or he considers that property of interest. So it's not clear right now if the value of that property, we're going to be able to arrive at an agreeable space right now, but that's something that we can continue to pursue as long as it's a reasonable value between now and next spring. I would say for the course of this conversation, it probably should be assumed that we're not able to secure it. And the last comment was around the entrance sign. So we moved the entrance sign back 20 feet from the right-of-way line and made sure that the lighting was going to be compatible with what Ms. Parrish was looking for, specifically that it was narrowly directed at the sign itself and wouldn't be a nuisance to adjacent properties.
That's the extent of it, correct?
That was the extent of the comments, correct.
We'll go through questions, Mr. Rosito.
If the owner agrees to removal of some of the asphalt, how much are you planning on removing?
So we have that existing, there's two parts of asphalt. There's the existing drive to the house, and our intent would just be remove it all the way back to the curb. And then there's a small patch of asphalt that looks like it's just grown up in the meadow or grass there, and that as well we'd remove. They're both small areas and wouldn't be that challenging to remove.
But you haven't contacted the owner yet or approached him with that?
Yeah, I don't know if we asked the owner about removing the asphalt. I think we asked him about buying the property. So certainly we would then, if he doesn't want to sell the property for a reasonable amount, then we would, ask at least to remove the asphalt.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Abbey?
Well, I'd back up to the subject of parking. With your research that you presented, I'm curious what time of day you came up with those numbers.
Yeah, so we counted it multiple times a day. Let me pull up what was in the report as far as the times a day, just to give you a sampling. We tried to count 2 or 3 times in a day. So it's typically one time in the morning and then another time in the evening or in the afternoon. So from
afternoon, sure. How about evening when everybody's home? Are some of your apartments going to be empty, or some people don't have cars?
Yeah, I'm flipping to it right now so I can give you some more precise times. So we counted, 7:30 a.m., 4 o'clock p.m., 7:30 a.m., 3 o'clock p.m. Pretty consistently between around 7:30, 8 o'clock, and then 4 o'clock. I think looking at most of our counts were before 5 o'clock. We did have one at 7:45 p.m. and that was 31 cars. 9:10 p.m. and that was 37 cars.
Either a lot of people aren't home at the time then.
A 9:30 p.m. and that was 32 cars. And a 10:10 p.m. and that was 36 cars.
Well, it just doesn't equate for 50 units, only not being able to at least accommodate 1 car per unit, which is low to start with.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why we don't provide 1 car per unit, because in our experience, it's not utilized. So a lot of people use the bus system that we have that we integrate into the site, and we don't find that the tenants utilize, each tenant does not have a car for the site.
Majority of our other properties that we manage, we're probably at a 50 to 60% fill rate on most of our parking lots.
So part of what we'd like to do is, rather than putting in, that additional 40 or 50% that we see going used, look at making sure that we're allowing for it and providing space for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be, installed if it becomes necessary.
Well, to date, all of our projects of this nature were requiring up to 2 cars per unit. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but that's what we've been doing. I just wanted to present that out. But other than that, I'll wait for other comments.
Any of the board members want to address the parking before we move on? Chuck's asking.
Well, I think I don't have a problem with the fact that we would be less than 2 per apartment in this situation, but I think a minimum of 1 per apartment would give us the need, because we have people. These people have visitors, and the visitors are not necessarily during the time that the review was done. It's probably a Saturday, Sunday that most people might get reviews. I mean, if this was where, someone's mom or dad was living, that's when they'd come. So I think that I would much prefer to see roughly 50 being available. What do we have at the first unit that we built?
We have 44 there right now.
44. And you're proposing how many now at this one?
46. We're headed in the right direction.
Well, I guess I would leave it up to the rest of the team, but to me, I think 1 per unit would be something I would appreciate.
There's also,
No other questions.
Thank you.
if I could jump back in, I was curious, of the 50 units, how many are one bedroom and two bedroom?
Justin, is that something, typically we do, 2 of the units will be 2 bedrooms. So it's typically 48 one bedroom and then 2 bedroom.
Okay, thank you.
And the 1 bedrooms are up to double occupancies, meaning there
Sure,
can be
but
2
wasn't
people in
right.
that one bedroom.
Any other comments on parking, gentlemen?
It's nice if we don't have to have more asphalt than we need. But again, we don't want to have a parking situation. I think 50, at least 1 per unit would be a minimum.
I agree.
How would you ever say if we had a parking issue 5 years from now, how would we go about making that take place? I mean, how does Neil build that into the approval process as opposed to putting a number in now that makes sense and leave it at that?
Microphone, Neil.
Right, sorry about that. If that's a question for me, you don't really build that into the approval process thinking that far down the road. If it had to be, amended at some point down the road, they'd have to amend it. But your approval process right now covers what you see in front of you. And you should think about what would happen down the road. But, an approval condition on that nature would be next to impossible.
Well, so the plan does provide for 46 spaces currently, and they do show 16 additional spaces, on the plan that they're currently proposing to keep in reserve. So you, in essence, you're planning for up to 62 spaces at this point.
Yeah, but what Neil's saying is that once the approval's in place, if there's a parking problem, it's really out of our control.
Right.
Well, to the extent that I guess you can't force them to build that, but I guess the planning is there for those spaces if they do run into an issue. I don't think it's to their benefit to have a parking problem on the site, and I think if they felt they needed them, I'm sure they would construct them. I guess is the way I'd look at it.
Yeah, I mean, if there was an issue, the tenants would cause enough havoc that the owners would want to make them happy.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
they're not afraid to share their opinions at all.
Yeah. The other thing I noticed is that those parking counts did occur on the weekends. Also, it was not just weekdays that those parking counts were done on the existing facility.
And evening, and I was there twice on the weekend, and once probably like at 6 o'clock on a weekday. In the times I was there was always sufficient open spots. And obviously we want to minimize impervious pavement.
Yep.
But we're talking about 4 spots to make some of the members happy. I'm just curious what the applicant wants to say to what you've heard so far.
If an additional 4 spots is going to make the board happy, I have no concern with that. Then we'll just have to work around it to figure out how to incorporate that or utilize what we have.
Mr. Bloss, have you got any comments at this point?
They've asked all the questions I could think of.
Mr. Marizio?
No, they've answered all the questions.
Yeah, I'm still on parking.
And I agree with Mr. Parrish's comment. I mean, if the tenants are having an issue, Ben's identifying additional space for us. If that's something that we're going to have to address because we're not meeting their needs there, we're a mission-based agency. We're going to make good by them. I know it's easy to say, in a meeting and stuff like that, but.
Mr. Abbey, your thoughts now? Chuck?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear the word Abby. No, I'm agreeing with what's been going on here.
So you're good with the 46?
Sure.
Mr. Snyder?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Parking settled. I think it's the best move. Does that conclude your presentation?
Yeah, I think we're available to answer questions that the board has. I think one thing I did want to capture, we continued to collaborate with the fire department to make sure we met their requirements. Just out of respect for that coordination, the one item that they asked was for us to make sure that upon purchasing and subdividing the property that we secure an address off Knowledge Lane. It's not something we're able to do right now because we don't own the properties. And so it was our discussion and sort of negotiation that would likely be a part of a conditional approval. That upon, subdivision and purchase the property, we would change the address to Knowledge Lane.
So where are we at this point, Neil? Are we ready for a motion for approval or?
No.
What's that?
Did you ask me or Mark?
Both of you.
Oh. It's got to go up to the town board and they got to get the overall PUD approval. They're going to do a public hearing and all that. So they're a little bit away as far as I can see.
Yeah, I think there's a couple issues here. I just went back to check here. The planning board has requested lead agency status. And that letter looks like went out on September 14th. So we have to give them 30 days, the other agency 30 days to respond. So we can't make a secret determination.
Right.
And then I think the next step, so the next meeting, we would be in a position to do that, from a time standpoint. So I think at that meeting, we could do a negative declaration if that's what the board chooses to do. And we don't get any objections, which I don't expect we will. And then we would then also at that meeting make a recommendation to the town board on approval of the site plan. I believe, Neil, doesn't the town board still have to approve the site plan on this, or is the process changed a little here?
After the legislation, so I think the order is it goes from here up to the town board based on a recommendation to approve the plan unit development. Then we finish up on the actual site plan of it after it goes up to the town board and they have a public hearing.
Okay.
And then back up.
Then back to the town board.
Right.
Yeah.
It gets bounced around, but we're not ready for a formal approval of the site plan yet. I mean, we went as far as you can go tonight because you did get the recommendation up to the planning or up to the town board, which does not require a secret determination.
Let me just ask a question about that sliver of property that's owned by the campus. I know you've been communicating with them, and I appreciate that part of it. And I don't know if I can get involved and communicate with them, because to me, it makes a lot of sense to have this included in this parcel. If it can't happen because they're not reasonable on price, then it's not going to hang me up. But it doesn't seem like it's got a whole lot of value just sitting there the way it is. I don't know if I can get involved and communicate with the property owner, see what their thoughts were, or if the applicant even wanted me to. I would just like to.
There's no prohibition against you taking that action, and it might be a better idea just to stay out of it, because I'm sure the applicant is able to communicate an offer to buy real property, but you're not prohibited from doing it if that's what you're asking for.
I just want them thinking, well, geez, we're forcing them to do that, so now it's got value that it really doesn't.
Yeah, I understand your thinking, because you don't want the landowner to think that there's pressure caused by the planning board to acquire that property and inflate the price, which is what a lot of landowners would think. Was that the concern?
Yeah, so I could just basically say in this public hearing that I really don't see a whole lot of value in that. I hope that the property owner would see that and see that how it would benefit them to transfer it over to these folks.
Right.
Yeah. Fine. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, I think it would just be helpful, maybe Steve, after the meeting, if we can get that schedule nailed down for the approval process, because I think we had talked about maybe it being a little different. And so We just want to make sure we get things ironed out that way.
It comes right out of 1014.
Mhm.
Right.
That's what's
So, yeah, so we can discuss a little bit here since Neil's right here. So I think we were anticipating that the town board would have a public hearing on the PUD at the 14th meeting of the town board. Now, if I understand, they can still have that public hearing for the zone change. And then it sounds like you'll be coming back to planning board on the 21st. And then you'll go back to the planning board then for final approval, probably, well, the meeting after the 21st would probably be the 4th of November. That schedule's,
Yeah.
Neil?
That makes sense.
The final approval is the town board though, right?
Correct.
After planning board.
So I think the next meeting, we were talking about them setting the public hearing at the 14th meeting for their following meeting. Are
Correct.
they able to do?
I stand corrected. They would set it at the next meeting and then hold it on the 21st. Like not the 21st, but the
28th.
28th. So then you would be back for the planning board by the 21st. So potentially then.
And that would be after the date for the seeker determination. So
Right.
that all works well.
Right.
Any other questions? All set?
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes our agenda item. Are there any other questions or comments from anybody? I just want to say quickly, seems like recently the fire departments have been very involved, and I know I speak for everybody when I say I really appreciate their input because they have the expertise that we don't have when it comes to their equipment and what they have to do to protect our community. So I just wanted to give them a kudos for all of them for doing a really good job. It's a lot of work. So with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Oh, wait, one question or one comment, Mark, to Mr. Snyder. If there is an issue with the new town hall, I know at the company I work for, we had, I think they call it a turbo, like a bomb or whatever. It was put into our facility. We had one unit that drew 1 million BTUs, and they didn't have to change the size of the line. It actually pulled the gas into the building. So that's something, if you don't have enough gas flow in there, you might want to look into. We did it probably 10, 15 years ago. And I remember I was involved in a little bit with a woman named Marilyn Higgins, I believe, National Grid.
Yeah, we're okay at this point. But it's just when I looked at the size, they were talking 2-inch and we ran 4-inch, and they have a lot bigger facility than we built for the highway. Just a slight concern that me as a non-engineer would thought of.
And let me interject here. Number one, we put 6-inch lines into the highway garage, and we, instead of running the normal 7 or 8 inches of gas pressure on that, we were in pounds. That's why we had to go to 3 regulators on our system. So if they want, they could bring high pressure into that Milton Cat building and then reduce it a couple of times, because each piece of the equipment normally that's built today will come, it'll handle 11 or 12 inches of gas pressure. Now you take 1 6-inch line at 7 inches of pressure, well, that's so many cubic feet a minute. Now, when you boost that up 11 or 12 inches, it's a lot more gas going down the pike.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, I'm going to go to sleep now.
Don't miss the debate.
We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Everybody, yes.
Second.
Second.
We are adjourned. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right.